Hello everyone, and welcome back to Our Eyes on Indie, and most importantly, welcome to Steam Next Fest. It's going on throughout this whole week here, and there are a whole bunch of games with demos that are going to be coming out within the next year or so, and there's a lot out there, and so you gotta ask yourselves, what's the most exciting? What is worth your time investing in? What is the best thing to look forward to? And that's what we're here to talk about today. My name is Finn, and it is my pleasure to bring you my top 10 most exciting games from Steam Next Fest. So let's dive into it. Starting off with number 10 is Sentry. This is kind of a special one to me, I guess. It's very reminiscent of things like Sanctum or Dungeon Defenders, right? And if you're like me and you played Dungeon Defenders a lot when you were younger, then you're always excited for these tower defense, but with a little bit more interactivity games. Sanctum, I also played a good deal of, but wasn't as big of a fan, but I have been getting that itch to dive back into a game like this recently, and Sentry is looking to scratch that itch. You play as a sentry, you're going to defend an area from these aliens that are coming in, first-person shooting, going around. It's crazy, but it's good. It's also simple in a lot of ways. You get to build your loadout from the start, picking weapons that go into slots, so you can have 2 weapons, maybe you can have more, just depends on how you kind of slot them in, and then you have passive and active things that go with, like holding more ammo or more armor, grenade, health stims. Then you also have to pick what things you want to bring with you that you can construct. Maybe it's some kind of turret or a station to get more ammo and health, or one that puts enemies in a bubble. All these things are going to be your towers for it, and it's really cool. I'm excited to see where it goes, but it's going to be coming out in the near future. Number 9 is going to be our good old friends at DRG Rock and Stone, my fellow dwarves. It's Deep Rock Survivors. If you don't know what this is, it's a spin-off of Deep Rock Galactic, which is a fantastic horde shooter game, especially with your friends. Played tons of hours of that, and this delves them into the Vampire Survivors genre that we've seen so many games go into, especially recently, and now I am not a fan of Vampire Survivors. I will be the first to tell you that. I don't enjoy it. It's too uninteractive for me. I like to think when I play games, and it's pretty easy in a lot of regards. And while I don't see myself playing this game too much, I'm definitely looking to pick it up. I think what is here is a lot of fun, from the different weapons you get to equip throughout it, from the different upgrades going through, and the mining. Having an actual objective to go through in these rounds is a lot more fun for me. You go through a few different levels. At the very last one, you're going to fight a big boss, and then you leave and you get some upgrades that persist throughout runs. So with those more objectives, it's definitely a game I'm looking more towards than playing Vampire Survivors. So, if you're a fan of the Survivors genre, then you're definitely going to love this. And if you're someone like me that likes a bit more meat, this is going to help scratch that itch a bit. Coming in at number 8 is Gunhead. This is a roguelike first-person shooter where you go into ships with your salvage team in a mech suit, and you go around, you have to destroy the AI core for the ship to get the data for it. It's pretty cool. I think the game needs a bit more to show me how it's gonna shine, because the demo only gives you one ship to go into, and then you obviously don't get to do any of the upgrades like the new mech suits that you get or anything like that, so you don't get to see a lot of what this game actually has to offer. But what's here has me intrigued, especially with the 4 weapons and having to manage all the different ammunitions, or if you just want to stick with the Jolt one that just launches you at enemies and is a melee, essentially. It's pretty cool. It's got a really cool mechanic, and it is how the systems work, right? So you've got different things like the drone system. You destroy that, the drones won't bother you. You have to destroy a shield system if that ship has one, so you can actually damage the AI core. Then it also reminds me a lot of Void Bastards because of that, where you're going to different parts of the ship and you have to get on through and figure it out. And then the other interesting thing with this, for me, is the fact that the 4 guns, their way they balance, the way they look on screen is really clean. And that just interests me, how clean it looks. It's like Armored Core, if you play the recent Armored Core, where even though you have all these things you're doing, it's really clean and you can always tell what's going on. So I'm interested to see how this game develops. I also want to give a huge shout out to the writing and the voice acting. It is fantastic in this. I was already so in love with these characters that were talking to me throughout runs and explaining different mechanics. It was wonderful. Moving on to number 7, we have The Last Faith, which is in that indie Metroidvania with pixel art. That's really nice style of game
wow,
that
someone made
we
a
just
Destiny 2
have
zombies
tons
map.
of now in the indie world. But The Last Faith
Yeah,
has
'cause it's
piqued
blue,
my
it's in Call of
interest, just
Duty.
like how Blasphemous did back when it
Also,
came out. Blasphemous
honestly.
2 has continued to make me interested in Metroidvania, despite the fact that it is not my favorite genre. The Last Faith looks to keep that going here, with some fantastic art direction and animations that look stellar, with combat that feels a bit slower than Blasphemous is, especially Blasphemous 2, but still just as satisfying. And with this whole having lots of different weapons you can equip and consumables, and of course an interesting world where the lore is slowly dished out to you little bits at a time, this world has me so interested, and I can't wait to explore more of it when it finally releases. Definitely looking forward to Last Faith. In number 6, we have Forgive Me Father 2, the sequel to one of my favorite boomer shooter genre games of all time, Forgive Me Father, still with that same comic book art style, but with even cleaner designs. Everything looks so much nicer than in the original. And the animations are even better. The gunplay is super satisfying, very punchy. The blood and guts go everywhere now. It is fantastic. It is shaping up to be a wonderful sequel to the original, improving on everything that the original did incredibly well and giving us even more. With a whole new way of upgrades, instead of the skill tree, you have this hub area where you spend these points and these tokens to get new weapons and different pages for your Necronomicon for when you use Madness. The whole Madness mechanic is different, all these different things, but it's super cool. Also, new flashlight. Instead of having, oh, each character has a different light skill, now you instead have that World War I kind of flashlight like you had in Amnesia the Bunker, and it's really dark, and the game definitely feels a lot more terrifying in some sections, but it's all going to be wrapped in that wonderful Cthulhu mythos shooting with, of course, the wonderful soundtrack when you get into fights. I cannot wait to play this game in just a little bit longer, and I will definitely be getting my fists into some zombies. Coming in at number 5 is a game called Cobalt Core, which kind of snuck up on me. I just happened to see it while browsing through Steam, through the Next Fest stuff as I was trying out games, and I was like, I don't know, it looks a little cartoony. It looked a little kid-like. You play as these 3 animals that are on a ship and you're stuck in a time loop. And then I decided to give it a go, and now I can confidently say it is an indie game I am incredibly excited for. It basically boils down to FTL, but a card game. And if that doesn't get you excited as a roguelike fan, I don't know what will. It's all about working with your ship, positioning to get out of the way of shots, or building your shield up so you can tank those shots. Am I going to spend my energy to do this or that? And while you're not managing individual functions like an FTL, you're still having to work around all these different things. You have artifacts that are specific to the different crew members, so their cards are more powerful, but the other crew members are not. It's a really cool system, and I also love the little dialogue back and forth between the 3 crew members that goes on during a fight. It's really fun, just add some nice character to it, and I am incredibly excited to get my hands on Cobalt Core when it finally releases. Number 4 is actually another game that I wasn't aware of until a friend of mine told me about it. This is Spell Rogue. Spell Rogue is another card roguelike, but hear me out, there's a twist. You use dice to activate everything. You play as spellcasters, and what you do is you roll dice at the start of your turn, and then you're able to slot those die into your spells to actually be able to cast them. They fall into different categories. Some combine 2 different die, and you get the result based on what both those dice add up to. And then you can then make it so you roll more dice, so that way you can do more spells. Some, for example, this is one of my favorite mechanics, the 2 starting things you have are an attack and a defense, and then a reroll. But the thing is, if I'm rerolling my low ones to high ones, I can't actually slot a high number into that defense spell, which means I can't gain armor. So if I want armor, I actually want to re-roll my higher numbers. So it gives you a reason to keep those lower numbers, or to maybe not push your luck, because if I have a 1 and I want a 3 for the armor, if I roll into a 4, suddenly I'm not able to use it. And so on and so forth. It's really cool how much they're using this system already. It's also got a countdown system for certain spells where you slot it in and then it just goes down a certain amount. So one I had a count out of 9. I could throw in a 6 and a 3. That makes it so that spell is able to be cast then. Some require specific numbers. Some use odds. Some use evens. There's a lot of ways you can build around. The build I did in my run throughout the demo was going with odd numbers and making it so I just get a lot of odd number die and be able to re-roll more and get more die. It was really cool. And it has me super excited to try it out when it officially releases later next year. Number 3 is Gangs of Sherwood, and if you don't know me, well, here's the thing. I love the tales of Robin Hood, okay? Robin Hood is a movie I grew up with. Yes, I understand Robin Hood was not a fox and Little John was not a bear, but I still have a heart for the Robin Hood tales, and having another iteration of that always excites me. Now, some of you may remember we had a Robin Hood multiplayer game just a couple years ago, and it fell through. I don't even want to utter the name because I get sad whenever I think about it. I had so much fun in it. If you know it, go ahead and put it in the comments below. You'll know what I'm talking about. But this is going to be another kind of multiplayer game. Alright, this is not actually what I was expecting entirely. As someone that went in with a little bit of, okay, I knew about this game was going to have co-op and multiplayer and be cooperative, I was expecting not exactly what I got. And I say that in a good way. This feels like what Dark Alliance should have been. Alright, it's a third-person action game very similar to Devil May Cry. You gain combo, you go up in style points, and then you're able to get more gold. Based off that, you turn gold, it increases your favor with the people, so on and so forth. But also, huge props to the devs for making it so you can play in an offline mode where you don't have to be connected to the internet and you can play by yourself. Super cool. All the characters, really cool. You've got Robin Hood, you've got Maid Marian, Little John, and Friar Tuck to start with. Each of them plays very differently. I played Robin Hood throughout my time in the demo by myself a whole bunch, and then I also tried out Little John for a bit. Very different characters in a lot of ways they could do. With Robin Hood focusing, of course, on a bow and arrow, and you charge up and get these star arrows that sit there, and then you can send them at other people by using your other attacks. It's a really cool system. You've also got grappling hooks, so you can grapple to enemies that go in the air. It is so much fun, but it feels like DMC, but if it had multiplayer, so you can play with up to 3 friends and be the entire Sherwood gang. It's also got this fun kind of narrator, charlatan, jester guy who says all these funny things and portrays it as a whole story with these puppets and stuff. And it's really cool. It's a great time. I'm so excited to give this a try when it comes out in November. Moving on to number 2, the Thaumaturge. This is one that as soon as it got announced, immediately piqued my interest. It's an old school kind of game. It reminds me a lot of Disco Elysium or Game Deck, if you've played those, where you have this isometric view and you're going around, you're kind of piecing together things as a Thaumaturge named Victor. You're going around, you're being able to sense the emotions of people, and you spend your Thaumaturge points to go into different areas of dimensions. Maybe you want to focus more on the mind or speaking or the heart of things, and that's able to get you more information on different objects and different people, and how you do that is also how you're going to be able to solve different problems. Combat in this game is also pretty interesting. It puts it in this I thought it was a card system at first. I'm not gonna lie, just the way it's structured. But then you get into and you go, oh, those are just the abilities, and you pick it like this, and it's actually round based with a timeline, very similar to Star Renegades if you've played that, which is a fantastic roguelike. But it's very similar to that in combat, and then you also have your thaumaturgic spirits that you have to mess with as well, and pick moves for them, and they do things and go around. And there's a whole lot that this game has in store. I didn't play too much more of the demo beyond the intro section area because I wanted to keep as much fresh as possible when the game comes out. But what's here already has me intrigued. And while some may argue the animation especially outside of combat, is a bit rough, and the character models can look a bit rough here and there. I don't mind it in the face if the story's going to be good and the gameplay's already solid, and I do think the animations in combat are really good so far. And finally, at number 1, the game that has me the most interested, that had my favorite demo of Steam Next Fest that I played, was Sandwalkers. This is from the people that brought us Legend of Keepers, which, while not a perfect game, and definitely not my favorite game, was still something I enjoyed. It had a lot of potential, it was a lot of fun, and I was excited to see what these guys made next. And Sandwalkers is exactly what I was looking for. It's a caravan game, and it reminds me a lot of Curious Expedition, if you've ever played that. You go in, and your job as this expedition is to go out and plant new trees in this dying world where trees are the only source of any kind of colonization or sanctuary. Your job is to go out, find the memories of these old caravans, maybe find out what happened to them as well as what they were looking for that could help you grow new trees. You are then going to go out, explore around the map, manage your supplies. By gosh, you better manage your supplies, and fight in turn-based combat with your party members of your caravan. As you're out and going around, combat's really cool. You have shield, which is going to be kind of your temporary hit points in a sense. They regenerate after every fight, but then any HP damage you take, you actually have to go and get healed, whether by resting at a town or other methods. And so you really got to manage that. You manage your leveling up. You have to manage equipment. You've got to figure out, okay, how far is it to next thing? Can I afford to take this detour to go explore something else? Enemies have their own resistances you have to figure out. You can see what damage they're going to deal. There's a whole lot you have to manage in combat, and I love it. It has me so incredibly excited to see where it can go, especially because you don't even get to mess with any of the real progression stuff in this demo version of it, right? It's just going into a run and seeing how things are, and it's really cool, and I'm so excited to see where it goes. But with all that said, those are my top 10 picks of my most anticipated games here from Steam Next Fest. There's a ton of other games out there, especially with demos that maybe no one's ever gotten to play before, or they're just really cool, and they got part of Steam Next Fest, and even though they've had demos out prior, like, for example, Deep Rock Survivor, these things are still cool, and they're really exciting to see, and I'm sure I missed some of them, or just didn't play some of the ones that are out there that are really cool, but, man, I'm excited for a lot of these games. If you are excited for any of these games, go ahead and list them in the comments down below. But until next time, we got tons of reviews on the way. I know it's been slow, but there's been a ton of stuff coming out, both indie and non-indie, that I've been trying to sink time into, while also, of course, living a normal life. And now that my hand is slowly getting back to normal, I can actually play a lot better than I could before. But with all that said, hope you all enjoyed. If you did, please leave a like on the video. Make sure to subscribe to keep up to date with all the good indie things that are going on in the gaming world, even with the scary things like Unity going on. But with all that said, my name is Finn. Hope you have a fantastic rest of your week, and we'll be here with our eyes on indie.